Welcome to our next review of the evening, The Raven: Legacy of a Master Thief, The Raven Remastered. So, I'll give a bit of background on this game. It is uh, it was an episodic point-and-click adventure game that originally released PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era. Uh, 2013, 2014, depending on the console and the area of release. Uh, it was a production of the Adventure Company, read like Nordic Games, THQ Nordic, and longtime collaborator King Art Games. They have made other games, other adventure games we have reviewed on this channel. Like the Book of Unwritten Tales 2. But this, just from a topical standpoint, this is a much different adventure game. I'm not exactly sure about gameplay elements because we are reviewing the Nintendo Switch edition. Yeah. Which is called the Raven Remastered because, well, it is a remastering of the original game for ostensibly the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and the Switch version is based off of that version.
I mean, the Steam version is also called Remastered, so...
Yeah, it's like... they presumably upscaled the graphics. I'm not sure if, like, to 4K, how much remastering this game has gotten is a bit beyond the scope here because, we did not play the original game. We did not play the Steam version. This is the first version of this game we have reviewed, which is why we're doing the Switch version, actually, because that just got released. Other versions of this game have been available for quite some time. Even the remastered version came out about a year ago. So, with that all in mind, here is the Galax to tackle the Nintendo Switch version.
So the year is 1964. Some 5 years ago or so, the famous thief, the Raven, was shot by an Inspector Legrand and has not been around, but suddenly they show up again, or someone in the same outfit and gimmick, and they are stealing... And they are specifically trying to steal a pair of gems called the Eyes of the Sphinx. You are playing as a Swiss policeman named Constable Anton Jakob Zellner, who is very pleasant looking, but more action inclined than you'd think. And your first thing is you're on a train where the eye is being transported, and then you go through there to a ship where it's being transported because they're going to Cairo, and then at the end you are in Cairo. The story it's an interesting story. There's a lot of characters, many of whom are likable and only a few of whom are kind of annoying, I think. Gameplay-wise, it's a fairly run-of-the-mill point-and-click adventure game. A good amount of dialogue and voice acting. You have to combine items sometimes in your inventory, and sometimes they get laid out for you to combine if you need to do it just right. Not a whole lot of analog complicated puzzle solving things where you have to actually turn a thing until it fits or something. There's not really any of that because some adventure games have that. The Switch version, I think, has a couple of hiccups. I don't know how this is compared to other versions, but there are some things that I had while I was playing it. The loading times between individual scenes are longer than I would like. Like a minute almost, I think, sometimes, just for loading a completely different scene. The controls are both, you don't have a whole lot of options. It can only work with either both Joy-Cons or a Pro controller or something that has like all 8 buttons and 2 sticks, because the controls are, you've got a start button for the menu, a select button for a journal that has hints for you that I think sometimes you actually have to consult to progress, but I'm not sure because there was a time where I think that's what solved it, but there might have just been a weird event trigger because I had a couple of issues with getting certain things to trigger properly. But you use the left stick to move your character around, which is a little bit awkward because he doesn't move super smoothly, I found. And then when you're looking at something, the right stick is used to choose between multiple things that are close together to interact with. And that was frequently kind of awkward for me when I was trying to... there's a puzzle where you have to make a torch out of a broken chair leg and a curtain and some flammable liquid and stuff, and I kept accidentally selecting the wrong thing. There's also the A button is to usually to interact with something, and the B button is to just look at it or get Zellner's thoughts on it, which is sometimes helpful. And then you do have an inventory, and there's a button that shows you your score and also highlights the top face button. X button shows you your score and also highlights all of the interactable things that are currently on screen, usually. I honestly didn't get that far because even with a guide, I got through the first section, but I did not get all the way to the last section. So, honestly, I have enjoyed it so far, and I'm probably gonna try and play some more of it. It's a little bit slow, especially with the long loading times, and sometimes the puzzle solutions are a little bit obtuse, and sometimes even when I know what I want to do, I couldn't figure out how to do it. Like, there's a time where you find out that someone was wearing gloves, and there's a character who's known to wear gloves, but I couldn't find a way to ask them about it, so... So yeah, that's about all I initially have. Do you guys have any questions?
So, like, what's the gameplay like? Is it kind of like Carmen San Diego, where you're trying to find the thief, or are you just trying to stop him?
Initially, you're trying to stop the thief. Well, first off, you're not playing as Legrand, who's the guy who's actually assigned to the case. You're this Swiss policeman who has his own reasons for wanting to be involved, and you first kind of have to prove that you're worth it to him. So your initial thing is you kind of have to try to solve some problems to prove that you're worth having involved in this, and then you also have to help prevent the thief from stealing more stuff, prevent him from figure out there are some murders, because of course there are. And at the end, you have to figure out who. I don't think it's two spoilersy that the new Raven is not the same person as the old Raven. So you have to figure out the new Raven's true identity and why they're doing what they're doing, and stop them from doing it. Honestly, it's a fairly... I don't think in terms of like mystery stuff, it's particularly far afield. Like, I found out what some of the twists are, and I don't think most of them are super shocking or anything. I did try to use some guides to try to get through it faster, but honestly, they actually slowed me down a little bit because they don't always say... There's a lot of stuff that it doesn't matter what order you do it in, but there are some things that it kind of does. Nothing major. Also, the score that I talked about, you get score on other platforms besides the Switch. It involves, there's more achievements and stuff, But even on the Switch, the score, once it reaches certain points, you unlock like concept art and sound tests and stuff. The voice acting was nice. There actually, because you're in Europe, there are a lot of accents, and I found they did a pretty good job of distinguishing them and not making them sound hokey. And the music is generally pleasant. It's backgroundy music that's mostly not supposed to get in the way of stuff. And generally intense scenes, there's not a whole lot of music that I noticed.
Mm.
Right.
Sorry,
Then.
I feel like I went through that too fast.
Well, there's something I want to talk about here, and that is pricing. So,
Yeah, I obviously didn't buy this because we got a code for it. That's why we're reviewing it. So I was going to check what the price is on the eShop.
well, this is finally an opportunity to talk about the quote-unquote Switch tax.
Ah, yes, that is a known factor.
And THQ Nordic is one of the most notorious publishers for this. So, the Raven Remastered is $30 on the Switch.
Oof.
And as an example, here is the Steam price. It is $20. It is $25 for the Digital Deluxe Edition, which includes the soundtrack, storybook with detailed background info about characters of the game, making of booklets of the original game, papercraft mask of the Raven principal, 4 digital posters principal. Now
I was already kind of iffy on the Switch version. I mean, it's nice for an adventure game to be able to take it places and play it where you want to. So, but it's a higher price, and like I said, the long loading times and the awkward controls are. It might be better to pick up the Switch, the Steam version.
But getting more to the point here, the question is, why is the Switch version more expensive than the other versions, is usually the question asked. And that is usually tied to the physical version.
Of which there is one, it seems like. So
Yes, THQ Nordic does put out physical editions of all of their games thus far, if I'm remembering correctly. And that gets into the Nintendo format, the Nintendo Switch's format.
Generally no discount for digital.
Yeah, and more to the point, they use those SD cards. And those are more expensive to manufacture and stuff than the Blu-ray discs of like the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. That is usually the reason why the Switch version of a thing will usually be more expensive than the other thing. It's because it probably has a physical version, and thus that's what's increasing the cost. And they usually do not give you a discount unless it's one of those sale things.
Yeah, sometimes you'll get digital sales or something, but honestly, Nintendo does not decrease prices on the Switch eShop much.
Yeah, I was about to say, by that point, you're probably better off getting it used.
Yeah.
So I do think this is a game that is worth checking out. I do think it is probably worth $20. I'm not certain that it's worth $30, and I'm not certain that the Switch's control scheme is exactly optimal for this. So,
and keep in mind, if you want a physical edition of this, that does exist. Like there is a PlayStation 4 version of this, for example, which is clocking in at under 20 because it's been out for a year. Now, this is just a cursory examination of of Amazon. It's like buying.
I'm not trying to knock anything, just considering all the factors.
No, but this is a problem with Nintendo Switch ports. In general, they are usually more expensive. Sometimes it's worth that, sometimes it is not.
Yeah, for some games, being on the Switch is a real bonus. I don't think that is that much the case for this one.
Yeah, it's like we cannot exactly compare releases. That's usually beyond the scope of our reviews.
Mm-hmm.
But given what you've said, it sounds like, yeah, you're probably better suited for the Steam version or even like the Xbox One or PlayStation 4. I give a recommendation towards the Steam version because this is a point-and-click adventure game.
Uh-huh.
And those
extras sounded pretty nice. So
yeah, so that's probably the version to get. Switch version, maybe if you want it on the go, but outside of that,
Is there a Vita version?
no.
All right.
But yeah, if you're into classic crime/murder mystery stories, I would definitely check this one out. It's an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
Though I don't know. If you're really into it, you probably know more what you'd like than I do. So.
Mm.
Right. So that'll about do it for the Raven Remastered. Be sure to tune in after this break for our final game of the evening, Reign of Elements Mage's Initiation.